My name is Clarissa. I'm the SVP of Sales in the US here at Capillary. Welcome, my friend. I'm joined here today by my very distinguished friend, Kevin Ertell. Kevin is the founder of Mistere Advisory, having spent time shaping brands like Nike, Sur La Table, Borders, and where I grew up, Tower Records. I've been wanting to get Kevin on here. I tend to gravitate towards everything Portland. Do you remember who introduced us, Kevin?
I do. It's our good friend Jenna Flateman Posner.
Posner, yes. She's the best, and she's great at connecting folks in the retail space. So I was really thankful to her for first introducing us. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing over there, kind of what your mission is, what gets you excited. I'd love to hear a little more about what you're up to these days.
Yeah, I mean, Mistere Advisory, we're really built on the idea that I've had decades of experience leading retailers in various capacities, digital, stores, marketing, operations, technology. In all those years, I've learned a lot. And the idea here is to create a platform where I can kind of give that back a little bit to others.
All right. So, Kevin, I would love to hear a little bit about the book that got us both excited, The Brief History of Intelligence, Evolution, and AI. It's about the breakthroughs that made our brains, and then also sort of what AI is all based on. You want to chat a little bit about your views on the book and what got you excited about it?
Yes, because I love this book so much. I think it's the best book I've read in the last 10 years. Because really what he does is he takes a look at the evolution of our brain and how our brain, or all animals' brains, have evolved and developed over the years. But there's a real parallel to how AI works in the same sense. And so we really learn how the brain works, what are all the mechanisms of the brain and how the brain reacts to different things. AI is essentially built on that same kind of idea. What's really cool, though, is he sort of explains that while AI is built on how the brain works, neuroscientists are actually using AI to better understand the brain also. So there's this kind of circular thing going on. But for me, when I was reading it, I kept going, oh, this explains so much about, I love like behavioral economics and how some of the things we do that are predictably irrational happen. Well, actually, when you understand the mechanics of the brain, you get that. And what I thought was really cool about the book is that Max Bennett, who wrote it, writes it in a really accessible way, because what I just talked about sounds super dense, but it's actually not dense. He explains it really clearly, uses lots of great metaphors, and explains it in a way that is very understandable to a dumb guy like me. So that's what
Kevin, I love in talking about, the book and the idea of emotional and rational loyalty and what frames all of us in our lives. It really straddles the concept of loyalty, right? And when we think about the things that motivate human behavior. And I know you've been a part of shaping the loyalty space for quite a few brands, enterprise brands. Can you share a little bit about your thoughts around that idea of either emotional loyalty, rational loyalty, which levers you've seen successful in sort of pulling in human behavior to motivate a change?
Yeah. I mean, in the book, he talks about the concept of reinforcement learning and the fact that the way our brains work is that our brains actually make these predictions before we take an action, which I thought was a really interesting way to understand it, and that the brain is constantly sort of recalculating its prediction algorithm to determine, what it should do next. And so loyalty programs, in a sense, work on that. Like you have a behavior, you make a purchase or what have you, and you get some reward for it. The way the book explains it, though, is that you need a time difference between the behavior and the reward, so that the reward or the prediction algorithm can start to run. And so I thought that was really cool, and it explained sort of points and benefits. But then what he explained was the brain is always sort of testing its prediction algorithm, essentially. And so it trial and errors new things sometimes. It doesn't just keep repeating the same behavior over and over. He talks about an example with rats and pushing a lever, for example. And he said that if you want to get rats to push the lever over and over and over again, you can't give them a reward every time. You have to surprise them sometimes. And that speaks to this idea that the algorithm is always testing to see if there's a better path. And if it gets surprised pleasantly, it updates the algorithm to repeat the initial behavior. So like that reminded me of like airline programs. Where you get miles, right? And that's very predictable. You make your flight, you get your mile. That's predictable, and you understand that. But you also get other things, like occasionally you might get an upgrade to first class. You can't predict when that's going to happen, but as you get it, it reinforces your reason to buy from Delta or whatever. And I thought that's like some really interesting mechanics to how a well-designed loyalty program can use sort of the way the brain works to drive loyalty. That makes sense.
Yeah, that was genius. And that part of the book really stuck with me too, the idea of the rat pushing that lever, because he also equated it to the idea of gambling.
Yep.
Which he also equated to social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading it and I'm finding like, oh my gosh, like I'm a rat. Like I don't gamble ever. But and you brought up a good idea of am I going to get that upgrade? Mm-hmm. I will check my app. Am I getting an upgrade? Am I getting an upgrade? Did that seat open up? I will admit, I go on LinkedIn, I go on social media, and I'm constantly looking for, I'm going to miss a thing if I'm not on there. And that element really rang through in the rat's behavior. So that was just really interesting. And also led me to thinking about gamification. Mm-hmm. in loyalty, which I think also kind of sits on that premise, the idea of we all want to spin that wheel, push that lever, scratch that scratch off. It's just innate in us. And I'm curious, have you ever, I know you started the program at Borders, you've been a part of, again, the other brands as well. Have you ever seen gamification in use in any of your loyalty programs that you've worked with or interacted with, or any that stand out to you?
We didn't do exactly game. The Borders program was built more on operant conditioning, which is sort of plays into the same kind of idea that you have a benefit and you get a reward, or you have an action and you get a reward a little bit later. But I think the gamification idea does make sense because it plays into exactly this mechanism of knowing there's a future reward if you keep doing this behavior, but not necessarily knowing exactly what that reward is, reinforces your desire to keep trying for it. And I do think that's valuable. I think you see surprises in other types of programs. Sometimes one that might not be the most obvious one to me, but I think does have that is just Costco's membership program. You know, when you go into Costco, there's always something new there. There's always something that you didn't expect. And I think that plays into that mechanism. So it's not gamification per se exactly, but it's the same general principles of that.
Right. No, it definitely encourages behavior. I think I've been a Costco member for like 20 years, and I've got the executive membership, which means I get that.
Me too.
That check back. I'm always so excited to see how much it's going to be. But then when I get it, I also think, oh my God, I spent that much that I'm getting this big of a check back. But it is exciting. And I know I'm really competitive, generally speaking. When I have my activity app on, if I can get a Queen of the Mountain or, break a record, I'm going to keep doing it. I've been in instances where I've practically killed myself to try to get there. So the idea of badges, things that aren't going to hit your financial ledger, it's not going to make your CFO mad, right? The idea of those incentives that get you excited but don't carry a balance. Do you have any thoughts on those types of incentives, the idea of badging or benchmarks and tiering to get people excited outside of those points reward mechanisms?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really good to have, first of all, a mix of different types of things. All of those can be a benefit to people. And it's actually probably better to not make everything financial, because if you do, then that turns the whole thing into a transactional relationship, which is fickle at best and certainly not, really where you want to go. So the idea that people can have badges or, things that they can show social status with, is beneficial, particularly if your brand is seen as socially desirable, right? So then if you're a top member in a brand that's socially desirable, that's a real benefit that's not financial, but it's a benefit nonetheless. And, go back to the book, you might get a dopamine hit out of that, which will go back and reinforce your initial behavior that got you there.
Right. I know something that we talk about a lot with our clients is something that we have baked into our solution called nudges. And it's based on the nudge theory. And that idea really of just figuring people out and motivating a change in behavior. Because, gone are the days where you reward someone who's drank 10 coffees with, surprise, one more coffee that they were going to buy anyway, right? We're always looking for those ways to nudge people into a different behavior. And I think that's how we see our tool using AI to do things just smarter, faster, more personalized. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that idea, again, of motivating a behavior, and maybe how retailers, I think, didn't always think about loyalty in that way, right? And now we're seeing marketers, brand leaders more cognizant of, I'm really looking to motivate a change in behavior. I don't know if you have any scenarios where you can speak to where you've seen a retailer do a really good job of first of all, being aware that they're even motivating a behavior, right? Capturing that data and understanding it, and then actually affecting change. I don't know if you can share any thoughts about any brand success stories you've seen being able to make that motivational change in behavior.
I think when we first built the Borders Rewards loyalty program, we essentially looked at that a little bit. One of the main pieces of the program was called a personal shopping day, and you were able to earn a personal shopping day the following month if you spent more than, I think it was $50 this month. And the $50 came out of the fact that the average purchase was like $42 or something like that, I think. So it was the idea to like nudge it up a little bit more than that was the basis of that. The personal shopping day that you earned the next month was you got a day where you got, I can't even remember what the discount was, but you got a big discount. So it was still pretty transactional, but the idea that it was based on changing what was a normal behavior. To your point about the coffee, like if somebody's coming in every day to buy coffee and you give them a free coffee, you didn't really change anything, So in this case, it was to push the behavior in terms of transaction a little bit higher. But I think you see that with airline programs for sure. When you get special programs that are double miles or what have you, that might cause you to make a trip that you wouldn't have otherwise done. I think that's a good example there.
Right. Something else that I know we're talking a lot about retail happens to be, passion for mine. And I know loads of experience for you, but we also see verticals like consumer packaged goods, travel and hospitality, borrowing ideas from retail and vice versa. I think when we talk to some of our casino partners and hotel brands, no one knows what a consumer is doing inside their four walls like a casino. Right? They know exactly where someone is at all times, but there's still room for verticals to borrow ideas from each other. I don't know if there's any particular trends or strategies that you've seen in other verticals that you wish retail would adopt, or vice versa, things you think retail's doing really well that you think those other verticals could really take a lesson from.
In terms of loyalty programs?
Yeah, strategy in general, even. We can even expand outside of that and just think about strategy, whether it's, clienteling, understanding consumers, motivating that change. Just what are some of the things that retail in particular is doing really well that other brands could catch wave of?
I mean, I think the best retailers are extremely customer focused and really understanding why people are coming into their stores or their websites and really addressing those needs. The best retailers also are really, they don't only get caught up in the shiny objects, they execute on the basics really, 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 really well. And I think that it's kind of consistent to me. The best of any company is a company that executes on the basics really well, funny enough. We get caught up in a lot of the innovations and all those kind of things, but the basics shouldn't be boring. The basics still matter a lot. And if you ignore those, it ends up being a really negative customer experience. So, Amazon's a good example too, where they do lots of innovative things, but you know what they do really, really well? They help you find the thing you want and they deliver it to you right away. They're like constantly reiterating and getting better about the absolute basics. And I think it's important not to lose sight of that.
Sure. So kind of digging into that a little bit, the idea of the basics, getting your foundation right. What are some of the ways that you think retailers and their vendors, their partners, can do a little better there and more effectively develop their relationships, more effectively use their tools? Any thoughts you can share with those of us on the vendor side about how we could serve retailers, CPG brands, travel hospitality brands better?
I think getting really, really tight on the core why. What is the strategy? What are we looking to do? And I think this becomes even more important, by the way, with the next generation of consumers. So, whether it's millennials or Gen Z, there's this push for authenticity that's more than we've ever seen before. And that means you have to stand for something, and then everything you have to do has to support that. And so I take that back to the vendor side of things. Like, as a vendor, if you're only caught up in your features and you're missing out on the strategy or the purpose or the ultimate end outcome that the retailer is trying to deliver for that consumer, then you're going to miss the mark. So getting really tight on understanding exactly what does the customer stand for, meaning the end consumer, what does the brand stand for that has connected with that consumer, and then how are you helping to support that? I think once you understand that and are able to connect that point, then you can say, and here's our features that really help drive that point, But starting with the features ends up going all over the place. And I see that happen with, honestly, lots of vendors who get very excited about their features and miss the end point of delivering the feature to the retailer.
No, that's good advice. Like understanding the why, right? Figuring out what's the point of this? Why am I doing this? Why am I looking to change my own internal behavior, strategy, all of that? That's great stuff. And it reminds me back when you mentioned the authenticity, particularly the younger consumer looking for authenticity. And really thinking back, that's taking us back to where we were, 100 years ago or so. When you would walk into a corner store, they would know exactly what you bought last week. They know one of your kids are sick. They know your spouse prefers this color. All of those little things that help them to then sell more are things that we're now doing with AI, becoming more personalized. We're doing the same thing that stores were 100 years ago. We're just doing it smarter, faster, and more personalized, which I'm hoping leads to that more authentic experience.
Yeah, and I love that comparison because that the value of the corner store in your own neighborhood is that person definitely cares about you because they're in your community. They're part of your community. They share lots of things with you. And that speaks to authenticity. I do think AI can help with that a lot, but if the brand is not truly authentic to some of these points and is instead using AI to essentially manipulate the situation, definitely the younger generation has very strong BS detectors, and they will see that. And
right. And I know we both have kids the same age, and they would be the first to call us out for that BS.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yes.
So you have to, it starts with really standing for something and then using the tools to help you, scale or spread that message and expand your community essentially. But, really standing for something also means the opposite, that you don't stand for something else. And I think sometimes that's a hard concept to say, like, this is our customer and this is not our customer. And we're okay saying something that really resonates with customer one, even if it alienates customer two. That's hard sometimes to think about, but it does, I think, matter, especially now.
It is hard. You mentioned the idea of it being challenging to figure out where to take a stand if you aren't able to go with your core mission values. But when you've got the data on your consumers, you don't have to do a lot of A/B testing. You don't have to worry about that because you really should know who they are and what's important to them. So again, it all starts with that data, which is great.
Yep.
I know we're going to be getting to the end soon here. I wanted to learn a little bit more about something I know you're a little passionate about, We haven't talked about, you and I have never talked about this, but you're doing something called monkey cage sessions.
Yes.
Tell me now, I, as a former martial artist who is really into fighting, when I saw monkey cage sessions, I was like, yes, Kevin, let's go. But I think I took that wrong.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
You were just thinking cage sessions, but wow, I just learned something about you that I'm very scared about. Stay on your good side. Now, monkey cage sessions is something I came up with a long time ago. It's a problem solving technique. And the basis of it is really trying to understand the problem before jumping into a solution. And so it's a multi-step process. And the first step is getting a cross-functional, multi-level group of people into a room to address a situation or problem that the team is having. And the rules in that first session are that you can only issue problems. You can only say problems, no solutions allowed. And usually I'll stand up on the board and we'll just write down all the problems people say. And it's a license to bitch, so it's cathartic. And we call it the monkey cage session because it's like, throwing poop at the walls kind of thing, but that's the whole idea, is that it's just complaint. That's step one. And it really helps in that first session, not only from the catharsis of it, but it really helps people see the problem from multiple perspectives. When you have all these people from different sides of it, people are like, wow, I didn't realize that was a problem for you, what have you. So that's step one. It helps open people's eyes, really define the problem. But usually the second step we'll do after that is take all that information that was just completely unstructured and structure it. So write it all down, put it in a structured categorization, which again helps people see it again a little bit differently, and then send that out even to a broader group of people so you get more opinions on it. Then after some time, usually 2 or 3 days later, when the stuff sinks in, you can bring people back together to start to solve the problem. And I find at that point, because you've so thoroughly defined the problem, that the solutions are almost obvious at that point. But the good news is everybody's seeing it the same way, and you're getting everybody on the same page to solve the problem. And that in itself is a massive step towards executing and actually delivering the solution. No being involved,
wow. Okay.
No bruises and face punches.
So not exactly what I thought it was going to be, but still very cool nonetheless. So let's wind things down a little bit and understand what are some of the metrics. For example, I know that when we're doing a review with a client and we're looking to understand the performance of their campaign, we're always looking again to make sure that we're motivating a behavior, that we didn't just duplicate that same consumer behavior, that they are either moving up in a tier, that they're outperforming maybe vintage members from, previous programs. Again, that idea of motivating a change. When you're speaking to a brand and you're looking to help them understand where they need to go, what are some of the metrics that you like to measure and see change and improvement in? Just a couple areas where a retailer or a brand could be mindful of these are the things I need to be on the lookout for to see if I'm really improving.
So, the answer is it depends on the business at hand. But one of the things I like to do is work with a retailer to create a KPI tree, which is a sort of mathematically connected hierarchical look at all the metrics of the brand so that we can understand the building blocks of the business. And we build that out, and it gets pretty extensive. But as we're able to understand how all these different metrics connect to each other, then you can start to understand where you might want to motivate something and what that motivation will do to in context with all the other metrics. So it depends. Oftentimes it might be we want to, repeat visits or something like that. But you sort of have to understand, is a repeat visit by itself going to deliver on the ultimate goal of the company or not? And that's where the KPI tree comes in handy so that you can understand how it's all connected. It might instead be, we're happy with the number of times people visit. We don't think they're going to repeat visit, but we want to get more AOV. Your coffee example earlier is a good example of that. Like, we might not be able to get more visits. They're coming every day already. So then it's about what more might they buy when they come in, or maybe it's like every fourth visit, we're hoping that they add a scone or something like that. So it just depends on the business, but understanding the building blocks of the business is critical to be able to understand where you want to improve a metric.
Right. All right. So I wanted to wrap up by sharing our favorite loyalty, either reward mechanisms, could be a cookie or it could be a program. I know for me, I'm a pet owner. I have a yellow lab and a golden retriever. So I go into my Purina app, and every day it'll give me a new fun activity that I can do with my pups. It'll make sure I'm walking them and give me some kudos, some points for walking them. I think I even earned some free treats. So that gets me excited because I can think of new fun ways to get my dogs active and outside and not have to think too hard about it. Share with me one of your favorite either reward mechanisms or programs. What gets you motivated?
The Starbucks is pretty good. I mean, they have double points days or different things that I definitely respond to. So I see some of those kind of things that get me going. And I mentioned it earlier, I really think Costco, definitely it gives me a reason to go all the time because I'm curious about what's going to be there that might be of interest. So both of those help for sure.
Sure. Yeah. And don't forget, tomorrow is Friday, I think they call it, the 50% off Friday afternoon at Starbucks. That will probably get me there as well.
There you go. We like it.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, anything you wanted to share with folks to leave any last minute tips other than not wanting to fight me in a ring?
Definitely
we'll find something else.
I think we talked about the book a lot, The Brief History of Intelligence. I really recommend everybody read that. It's such a value. And, if you're in retail, there's so many concepts in there that if you can understand the sort of core mechanisms of how people work, think, you will see it come to life in your daily work, whether that's a loyalty program or a marketing program or how you're interacting with your staff on a day-to-day basis. There's some really valuable information there that I'm a big fan of.
No, I agree. All good stuff. Kevin, I enjoyed our chat. I know you and I connect and chat offline a good bit, but folks can always find out more about us at capillarytech.com. Kevin, how can we learn more about you guys and what you're doing there and how you can help brands?
Yes, by all means, come to our website. It's mistereadvisory.com. Mistere is MISTERE advisory.com. Follow me on LinkedIn. But I'd love to connect with anybody. And Clarissa, it's always a pleasure to connect with you. So thank you.
It is always wonderful. And absolutely do follow Kevin, and you'll learn more about monkey cage sessions, among many other things, as well as what are the best books to read out there. So thank you, Kevin, so much. And I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.